data has been stored in a way that only allowed for human points of access or interface. The emergence of machine learning, or ML, requires not human points of access, but machine points of access. And in order to achieve such machine access, it's required data stakeholders to carefully consider the entire data infrastructure.
I feel like I say this every year, but 2022 was incredibly busy.
You can say that again. But now that this year is drawing to a close, it seems like a good time to reflect on how this year was shaped by the many disruptions of the years before and consider what is in store in the year to come.
Hi, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Sarah. We're the hosts of The Analytical Wavelength. At ACDLabs, we get a unique perspective of what is happening in the world of chemistry.
Absolutely. We get to work with the best and the brightest at all levels of the chemical and pharmaceuticals industries. This gives us the opportunity to see what scientists all around the world are doing in the lab and how they use and manage their chemical data.
As the Vice President of Sales at ACDLabs, Mark Meyers is always following the trends to anticipate the needs and desires of our customers.
Today, we're talking with him about what he sees as the most important takeaways from 2022 and what to expect from 2023. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hello, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. We're going to start off with the question we ask all of our guests, and that is, what is your favorite chemical?
Well, that is an interesting question for a non-chemist. And my answer would be a chemical substance that I was once introduced to years ago by a colleague of mine when I first entered the field of cheminformatics. And that compound is called a buckyball. Its shape, as you may or may not know, is very interesting and consists of 60 carbon atoms fused together in a soccer ball shape. Kind of timely given the World Cup going on. I recently reviewed an article online by Vasant Ravi indicating that they actually thought that these only existed in the lab and not in nature. But in 2010, astronomers actually found proof that they were indeed bopping around in space, deep space that is. And I'm sure we're going to learn more about this mysterious compound in years to come.
Yeah, it is a really clever, interesting little thing. It has lots of uses too, so that's a very good choice. So let's get into things. And you are, of course, our VP of Sales here. So we want to talk to you about some things related to the business side of the chemistry world. One important part of the sales process at ACDLabs is understanding the workflows and business practices of our customers and deliver solutions that fit them. Of course, there's been a lot of disruptions in the last couple of years, as everybody knows. So I was wondering how workflows and business practices have changed in the last couple of years from what you've seen.
Yeah, it certainly is critical that we understand our customers' workflows. But we also need to be intimately familiar with their data flows. Our sales organization is focused on the delivery of solutions that create value for our customers. And you can't do any of this unless you invest time in understanding customers' workflows, processes, data flows, and overall business and IT goals. Each organization has its own unique underpinning from both an IT and business perspective, and these have to be understood to deliver these value-added solutions to them. Now, to answer your question, if I had to identify some specific changes in the industry dynamics related to workflow and business processes, it would be around the specific trends that have been accelerated due to the worldwide pandemic that we've all recently been through. These trends include the automation of various processes and workflows in the lab that were previously performed manually. And again, all due to the direct onset of the various global work from home mandates. Therefore, many workflows and processes had to be adopted or rethought to incorporate remote access and automation of lab equipment. This, in turn, allowed scientists to continue their research without physically being in the lab. This led to organizations accelerating their implementation of cloud-based applications and solutions that could subsequently be easily maintained remotely by IT staff, and also allowing the remote access by the organization scientists that need to keep their research advancing in new and different directions. This focus on internal systems, led by both business and IT to push the limits of technology, also helped organizations to see the gaps in their data flows and processes. Furthermore, the data infrastructure that has existed within these organizations have historically been built to enable specific answers to specific scientists' questions. In other words, data has been stored in a way that only allowed for human points of access or interface. The emergence of machine learning, or ML, requires not human points of access, but machine points of access. And in order to achieve such machine access, it's required data stakeholders to carefully consider the entire data infrastructure. Subsequently, these organizations found out very quickly that they lacked the skill sets to take on any AI or ML initiative due to the challenges related to data standardization and harmonization, along with the shortage of data scientists to help them better organize and manipulate their data to support such initiatives. So clearly, these things have all, accelerated various aspects of digitalization, automation, and data standardization.
Yeah. So to kind of build on that a little more, and I think you got there in your previous answer, but part of our core customer base, like you mentioned, are the scientists, or even more specifically, analytical chemists, and they definitely make up a large part of the end users of our software. So what do you see these analytical chemists specifically being interested in the year ahead? And is this in line with what you would have predicted 3 years ago, back in 2019?
Well, yes, our core customer base is indeed analytical chemists and the team members they support. Their work provides the fundamental basis for all types of decision-making within their organizations. So these analytical chemists continue to look for ways to run more experiments in less time while producing accurate and timely results. I believe they will continue to be interested in the automation of all types of workflows and data flows by continuing to seek out better ways to marshal data from instruments to result conclusion with limited scientific intervention. Driving the analytical community to only review results that are outliers or are an exception to specific expectations. And what I mean by that is the analytical workflows ACDLabs specializes in will be automated at a point that a scientist can rely on all calculations and computations to be accurate and correct with the algorithms in place. And they only need to perform the review of specific data or experimental results by exception. This means all routine data processing can be automated and validated once without any manual intervention, allowing for a significant savings of analytical scientists' time. In addition, in order for AI and ML initiatives to take hold, especially in the analytical space, data standardization needs to occur. ACDLabs has been encouraging organizations to standardize on their analytical data formats for years, and organizations are finally starting to take notice and implement such capability. ACDLabs, in my opinion, is one of the few, if not the only organization uniquely positioned to help customers achieve this vision, as we support a variety of instrument types, vendors, or vendor agnostic, over 155 different instruments and file formats of analytical data formats today. There are also many organizations that are attempting to drive standards that ACDLabs also supports. These include Allotrope's ADF format, their ASM format, which stands for Allotrope Simple Format, their ontologies, as well as support for other competing analytical data standard formats like Animal and JSON.
So going back to some of your previous comments, you mentioned a few times now already, like algorithms and things like machine learning. There's a lot of other buzzy topics right now. Automation, I think you mentioned already. High throughput experimentation is another one, in cloud computing. Are these, is this excitement in these sorts of topics being translated into implementation? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, excitement, buzzy. I'm not sure I would call them all of those, but they are real and they each deserve attention. And in many cases, they're not new. There is just a renewed focus on them. Whether it's excitement around certain ones or not, they are indeed being translated into implementation today. For example, the use of automation and robotics in drug discovery has been around since the mid-90s, as has the concept of neural networks and to some degree, AI and ML. However, like any of these technologies, they have to be molded to fit specific use cases and solutions to be valuable. Initially, people try to apply these concepts to a lot of different areas, and they typically fail because it's either the wrong use case for the technology or the infrastructure or the application. I personally have seen a lot of that over the years. Therefore, for the concept to be viable, it also requires complementary technology components to go along with that to make them viable and adopted into the mainstream. ACDLabs has been utilizing AI-type algorithms, and to be more specific, neural networks since the mid-2000s. So to ACDLabs, this is not necessarily new technology, as it's been embedded in various aspects of our prediction software and capabilities for many years. So not a new concept in AI, but people are again paying attention because the underlying technology has advanced to the point that utilization of AI in different areas is actually possible and valued. In addition, the ability to automate workflows and data flows in the lab, combined with the ability to harmonize and standardize on all types of data, are allowing the convergence of multiple technologies to create solutions in support of drug discovery and development, but in other aspects of the healthcare industry, as well as clinical trials, real-world data analysis, and the general healthcare industry. Now, to circle back to two other areas of your question, high-throughput experimentation and cloud computing. For high-throughput experimentation, many organizations, but certainly not all, have embraced the concept of chemists running more diversified experiments in a shorter time. The only way this can be achieved is to parallelize efforts. And instead of running one experiment at a time, perhaps running 3 at a time or 24 at a time, 96, 386, etc., and varying any number of experimental parameters, allowing simultaneous optimization of both starting materials, synthesis protocols, catalysts, etc., all to improve the speed of route identification with potentially higher yields and fewer impurities. We see a lot of this in development, particularly in support of QBD, just one example. You can do this by exploring the chemical and process parameter space around an API synthesis or formulation, thus forcing an increase in the number of experimental runs, but also decreasing the time to a result. And time is critical in drug discovery and development. And you can only accommodate such a large experimental scope by utilizing robotics and software designed specifically to manage the entire end-to-end workflow. Fortunately, ACDLabs spotted this trend several years ago and decided to implement a product called Catalyst D2D, designed to decide for many of its existing customers. And finally, cloud computing is here to stay. But I would caution organizations that not all applications are meant for the cloud.
Yeah, certainly. I would agree with that last statement for sure. But we talk a lot about the pharmaceutical industry here, as you were mentioning drug discovery and APIs. But we also support customers both in academia and the more broad chemical industry. Have you seen any unique trends or stories in any of those areas?
And you're right, yes. ACDLabs supports over 3,000 plus organizations worldwide and tens of thousands of users in all different types of industries, from academic, government, forensic, specialty chemical, consumer products, and the list goes on. Anywhere someone needs to perform any type of chemical analytical tests, ACDLabs is there to support it with either its expert desktop tools or its enterprise tools. These enterprise tools allow organizations to store, manage, process, query, and report on all different analytical data types. These industries, like the pharmaceutical industry, are generally following the same trends, each attempting to focus on automation, cloud computing, analytical data standardization, digitalization, and in some cases, high-throughput experimentation, all in their own and unique way. And currently, we're working with several specialty chemical organizations in providing an automated analytical data processing, capture, storage, and retrieval system in support of their global analytical efforts and departments, not unlike what we do for our large pharmaceutical companies. So this ability to actually database analytical information and all the processing metadata is critically important to every industry that we serve.
Okay, so a lot of this, the same trends, it sounds like, yeah, for sure. But I think that generally for ACDLabs, 2022 has been a very busy year. I'm sure that you could probably agree with that you've had a lot on your plate. But I wanted to ask you if there are any accomplishments or highlights from the year that you could share with us from the company, or any important lessons that you took away from 2022.
Happy to. 2022, yeah, it's been a very busy year for ACDLabs, for a variety of different reasons. ACDLabs continues to have success in advancing its products and solutions and creating value for its customers in the industries that we serve, which is the most important thing we can do to maintain our longevity. Most notable are the continued acceptance of our enterprise solutions, including Catalyst D2D, which I mentioned earlier, Luminata, our CMC decision support tool, and our enterprise analytical data management systems, as well as the continued utilization of our robust expert analytical desktop tools and predictive software capabilities. Also, ACD recently embarked on a journey to migrate its existing expert desktop tools to the web, a journey that started last year. And at the end of 2022, we have made significant advances in fulfilling our vision by adding the capability to process LCMS data on the web, with more capabilities to come in 2023. And to continue, one of the more interesting highlights for us is the most recent announcement of our continued and longstanding partnership with CAS, Chemical Abstract Services. CAS has, over the last 20 years, invested in ACDLabs NMR prediction algorithms and our other physical chemical property offerings. More recently, they made an additional significant investment to access additional property predictions, both in ADME-Tox, along with revised NMR predictors to enhance their own product offerings. CAS is a respected source in this space and continues to use and see ACDLabs as a premier supplier for these algorithms and tool sets. Finally, the one important lesson from 2022, like any other year, is that providing important, valuable tools for our customers, whereby they continually invest in our offerings, is the most rewarding experience an organization like ACDLabs can have. And we hope to continue to do so in the years to come.
Yeah, that sounds like a very busy year for sure. And so as someone who is right in the thick of all of this, I'm really interested to hear what are the trends or topics that you'll be following to start out 2023?
Well, I think I mentioned them. They continue to be persistent in the industry. And so automation, machine learning, and analytical data standardization and data formats will certainly be at the top of the list for sure. And so we will continue to make significant advances in those areas and in our web-based expert tool set.
Great. Thank you so much for giving us all that, a lot of information and a very wide view of the field. So that's been lovely to have you and get all of that context. It was very interesting.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Jesse. I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
I'm so glad we got to hear Mark's take on the various trends in the world of chemistry and chemical data. It sounds like there's a lot to be excited about.
Absolutely. And that is good news for us, as we'll have plenty to talk about in 2023.
Indeed. If you'd like to learn more about our partnership with CAS that Mark mentioned, there's a link to the press release in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to the Analytical Wavelength. Best wishes over the holidays, and we look forward to bringing you more conversations in the new year.
The Analytical Wavelength is brought to you by ACDLabs. We create software to help scientists make the most of their analytical data by predicting molecular properties and by organizing and analyzing their experimental results. To learn more, please visit us at www.acdlabs.com.